Hello friends, welcome to one more video on disbursement and reimbursement. So there is a lot of discussion happening on how some of the disbursement and reimbursement angles can be looked at. I thought let's start connecting with what's the basics and how it should be evaluated. So to evaluate what we did, we just picked up what are the principles of disbursement to look forward to. So there's some of the principles which are clearly defined in the guidance note issued by FTA also. So first principle says the other party, that means whoever is issuing the invoice, should be the recipient of goods or services. The other party should be responsible for making the payment to the supplier. That means from where I'm getting a payment, if I'm issuing an invoice on the disbursement side, then I should, that means the party who is collecting as a disbursement should not be the responsible party, neither as a recipient of goods, neither as a responsible for making the payment. The third point says the other party should have received an invoice or a tax invoice, as the case may be, in its own name from the supplier. So again, if I am calling it as a disbursement, the invoice name should be in the other party name who is giving the payment to pass through. The other party should have authorized you to make the payment on his or her behalf. And the further point says the goods or services paid for such should clearly be additional to the supplies you have made to the other party. So this should not be the only activity or only things which you are doing. And the last point clearly says separately be shown in the invoice. That means disbursement should be categorically defined separate. And you should recover the exact amount without taking a markup. So no markup should be there. We'll get into example to see what we are talking about. But if you look at the gist, what the gist is saying, if I am calling some item as a disbursement, that means I'm recovering the money without charging any VAT. The invoice should be in the party's name to whom I am issuing the disbursement invoice. So that's the crux or the connecting point which comes into. Let's look at what is the principle of reimbursement. So reimbursement is all a taxable supply we talk about, where we are going to charge 5% VAT as a normal standard. So these are basic principles we know. In this case, you should have contracted to the supply of goods or services in your own name. That means I'm getting goods in my name. If I'm getting goods in my name, I should charge 5% VAT when I'm supplying it further, right? You should have received the goods or services from the supplier. That means the goods and services are received and then further supplied. So the 5% element comes into play. The supplier should have issued the invoice in your name and you are under the legal obligation to make the payment for it. So these are the categorization of reimbursement which is coming up. In case of goods, you should have owned the goods prior to making the onward supply. That means I should first possess the goods in my name, either legal title or a transfer title or physical title, and then only goods can be supplied. So these are all cases where 5% VAT should be applied. I'll take an example. I have just picked up some example and we're going to use some assumptions also to make it clear. So there is a car rental company which gives a rental contract, or you can say per day or per month basis as a car as a rental. Now, what if I have to debit or charge SALIC to the person who has taken the car on rental, and there is some traffic fines or traffic violation fines are there? Who should be paying the VAT, or should we charge a VAT? Should we call it a disbursement or reimbursement? So these things keep cropping up for a discussion point. What I've done, I use some assumptions. My first assumption is SALIC is paid based on car vehicle. That means when you are topping up a SALIC, you are technically topping up at a car. And any kind of a SALIC invoice or payment receipt is issued to the car owner. So these are the facts or assumptions I'm using. Whereas in the traffic fine, my traffic fine is based on the license. That is based on who is driving the car. And the traffic fine voucher and payment receipt is issued to the driver. So if you look at both these things, the categorization of reimbursement and disbursement is getting defined. In SALIC case, I am not, that means the person who is driving or who has taken the vehicle on lease is never getting a SALIC invoice in his name or her name. Hence, whenever a car rental company is doing or invoicing the person who has taken the car on lease should qualify or may qualify it as a reimbursement and charge 5% VAT on that. Whereas if you see the category in case of traffic fine, In this case, traffic fine is anyway issued in the name of the person who has taken the car on license, on lease, because he is using his license to pay or settle the fine. Hence, we can categorize this as a disbursement. So it's a action plan. You need to be very careful. The assumptions I have used, please use those assumptions along with the answer which is coming up. So in the first category, what we're talking about, a car rental company may issue a tax invoice for recovery of SALIC, since the SALIC is paid by the car owner or the car rental company. And then you are raising an invoice. So there is no direct invoice being raised to the person who has taken the car on lease. Whereas in case of the fine or a traffic violation, we are calling it disbursement because the car rental company is only recovering the money for further payment to the traffic fine authorities or the authorities to whom the fine has to be paid. So these are some of the elements which we need to look at when we look at or differentiate between reimbursement and disbursement. Always look at in whose name the invoice is issued. Are you only processing the banking transaction, that means facilitating the banking transfer? Those points are very valid to be looked at to arrive at the discussion point. Hope you find this this session useful and got some additional tips. If you like it, give a thumbs up and do subscribe also to further more videos on this angle. Thank you very much. Till we meet, have a great time.